The Opencut Section, which oversees the extraction of materials such as sand, gravel, and clay, has faced increased media and public scrutiny in recent years, particularly since House Bill 599 took effect in 2021. The statutory changes were intended to boost production and speed up permitting. They also raised public concern about potential economic effects on nearby residential properties and created immediate procedural challenges for the Opencut staff. Staff struggled to review and issue permits under new statutory timelines. Compliance rates fell to 75% for completeness reviews and 69% for acceptability reviews across all permit types. Additionally, open-cut mining sites can reduce nearby property values. Homes within a half mile of an open-cut mine experience an average sale price reduction of 8.4% or around $37,000 for a typical $450,000 Montana home. For nearby homeowners, the concern is, well, concrete and not abstract. I'm content editor and host Eric Seidel, and I'm here with the author of the report titled Open-Cut Mining, Permitting Efficiency, Property Value, Production Impacts, and Tax Equity, Julia Conley. Stay with us over the next few minutes as we discuss this audit and more on the latest episode of the Legislative Audit Division Podcast. All right, as I said, I'm here with the author of the Open-Cut Mining Report, Julia Conley. Julia, thanks for joining me today to talk about your audit report. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me today.
Julia, if you wouldn't mind, just tell me a little bit more about DEQ and open-cut mining.
Yeah, so the Department of Environmental Quality oversees air, water, energy, and mining activities in the state, which includes open-cut mining.
Okay, how about the Opencut Section more specifically?
The Opencut Section oversees over 1,400 mining sites in the state, and the small staff of 11 typically manages 100 pending permit applications, up to 100 reclamation bond release requests, and 200 planned site inspections at any given time.
So, Julie, as we start to get into your audit, I know that House Bill 599 was a bit of a catalyst to your work and to this audit a little bit. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so in 2021, the Montana Legislature passed House Bill 599, changing parts of the Opencut Mining Act. The bill took away some environmental protections and shifted responsibilities of certain regulations away from DEQ. One major change was reducing the statutory review time frame for dryland permits, and these are for sites that will not impact ground or surface water. The bill created a lot of public interest, especially for economic and environmental impacts. So our goal with the audit was to assess not only how efficiently and effectively open-cut staff can review and issue permits, but attempt to identify some level of impact of these mining sites on nearby residential properties. As you would expect, local property owners are concerned about the effect of these sites on their property values.
Okay, and what kind of work did you do to address the concern of residential property values?
We conducted a regression analysis to compare changes in housing prices over time between properties near active open-cut mines and properties near what we consider inactive mines, which are not yet established or already reclaimed sites. And my colleague Kenneth can talk more about the work we did here.
All right, Kenneth, as we just kind of slide you in here, if you could just give me some of the details on how you came up with the figure, the amount of a residential property, if it was affected by living near an open-cut mine site.
Yeah, so as Julia mentioned, we did a regression to find the impact of open-cut mines on nearby residential property values. We actually used what's called a difference in differences design, and this one was a staggered adoption design. And that compares homes that sold near open-cut mines and near open-cut mine sites that were inactive before and after the mines became active. And that gives us a causal estimate about the impact of the mine being there on property values. So for the average Montana home valued at about $450,000, we found if it was within half a mile of an open-cut mine, it would have lost about $37,000 in property value, and that comes out to around 8.4%.
And was there anything else interesting in your analysis that you found?
Yeah, we also compared to state property tax assessments to see if the Department of Revenue is accounting for the impact of mines in their assessments. What we found is that the DR does not consistently account for the impact of open-cut mines across the state because of limitation in their sales model. So for homes in rural areas where there aren't very many sales, there may only be a handful of homes nearby this open-cut mine. Those won't really get their property values updated to account for the presence of this mine nearby. If you take that same average home, $450,000 in value, they would be overpaying by up to $240 a year on their taxes based on that incorrect assessment.
Sure, and while $240 doesn't sound like a lot, Kenneth, nobody wants to pay more if the amount is incorrect, much less take a $30,000 or $40,000 property loss if they're living next to an open-cut mine. Kenneth, thanks for joining us today and helping us make some sense of that. Julia, as Kenneth makes his way out, where did that leave you then on a recommendation given that information?
Yeah, we learned that there are opportunities for the Department of Revenue to account for this impact, and so we recommend that they investigate ways to accurately account for changes in property values near open-cut mines.
Okay, so that was your first recommendation. Can you tell me what was some of the work you did that got you to the rest of your findings on this audit?
The rest of our work focused on production, permitting, and staff resources.
Julia, tell me if there was anything else, specifically with the House Bill 599 changes.
Sure. With the new statutory review timelines for both standard and dryland permit applications required under House Bill 599, we also needed to assess whether open-cut staff could effectively meet these timeframes. For both permit types, staff have 5 working days to review the permit applications to ensure that all fields are filled out, all documents are submitted, and that also includes a security bond for the reclamation of the site. All of that is considered the completeness review, and once an application is deemed complete, the applicant is notified, and then staff review the application for acceptability, which includes an environmental analysis.
Okay, and how much time do they have to review that?
For the acceptability review, staff have 15 calendar days for dryland permit applications and 30 to 45 calendar days for the standard permit applications.
Okay, and given those timelines, you looked at some permit applications, and what'd you find?
Yeah, so we looked at 126 permit applications that were issued between January of 2022 and December of 2023, and we found that staff were inconsistently able to meet those statutory timeframes.
Okay, and during the time of this audit, did you find maybe what led to that, or?
During this time, Opencut staff were relying on multiple different systems and tools to help them manage these permits, including different systems for document storage, site details, permit tracking, and staff assignments.
And ultimately, did you land on a recommendation for that?
Because the different tools create compliance risks and best practices for permitting recommend accessible electronic tools, we recommend the Department of Environmental Quality implement an electronic application system to improve compliance and help promote clarity and efficiency.
Okay, and as we move on to the end of the report, you said there's also a lot of confusion and misunderstandings because of all the changes that House Bill 599 brought on. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a clear need for better communication and education about the permit process, especially regarding permit types and those legislative changes. We found that many operators and members of the public lack the information needed to navigate the process efficiently.
Okay, how so? Like what?
Well, one example is from our survey of operators. Many operators found the review process frustrating. They reported little guidance from the department and inconsistent responses from staff, which the department links to staff turnover and heavy workloads. Ultimately, we found that these issues caused delays, sometimes resulted in higher costs for operators, diminished public trust in the process, and once again, increased compliance risks. The department has tried to educate and engage stakeholders through quarterly meetings, both in person and on Zoom. However, members of the public and operators still felt uninformed and concerned about the permitting process.
Okay, and you had a recommendation for that as well?
Yeah, so we recommend the Department of Environmental Quality enhance communication through clear, accessible instructions and timely updates on legislative changes, and simplify and clarify permit application instructions.
All right, Julia, well, that gets us to the end of your audit. Thanks again for coming in today and going over that with us here in a little bit of a different format with the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
For more on the Opencut Mining audit or any of our audits, you can go to legmt.gov/LAD and check out our latest audit report section. One last time, I'm content editor and host Eric Seidel. Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Legislative Audit Division Podcast, a performance evaluation on Opencut Mining.